You're listening to WNHH Community Radio 103.5 FM in New Haven. This is The Table Underground, and I'm your host, Tagan Engel. We're digging into stories of food, radical love, and creative social justice. Life as a chef generally revolves around cooking up food shoulder to shoulder in the kitchen, dishing out meals to people sitting in intimate spaces together. At this moment, though, in the middle of a global pandemic, the usual business of working as a chef is just not possible. It's no secret that the restaurant and hospitality industry has been devastated by the economic shutdown. However, not everyone in the industry is feeling it the same way. From undocumented workers not receiving any aid, to prep cooks, independent restaurant owners, and even large corporate restaurant chains, the pandemic has heightened the many realities and deep-rooted injustices in our society and throughout our food system. In the midst of all of this are chefs who find joy and purpose through cooking and long to get back to the business of making a living and building community around food. Today's guests are three Connecticut chefs, each working in a different part of the food industry, and each having a different experience of the COVID-19 shutdown on their work and lives. We're joined by Chef Avi Shapiro of Roya Restaurant in New Haven, Chef Raquel Rivera of A Pinch of Salt Culinary Education and Catering Company in Bridgeport, and Chef Aaron Lee of Yale University Dining and his personal business, Heartfelt Catering. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome, thank you.
So good to have you all. We are recording on Zoom Live. I did just get bumped out right before we were about to go live. So I'm on my phone. I hope it's working all right. I hope everyone's with us. Avi, we're going to start with you. Are you there?
Here.
All right, great. So I'm really glad you're here. Thank you for making time to do this. You're originally from Bogota, Colombia, and you've cooked in many places around the world. And in 2013, you opened Roya Restaurant in New Haven, fine dining restaurant together with your wife, Mira. And I happen to know that you spent a lot of time renovating this restaurant, living upstairs from it for years while you were kind of pouring your heart and love into building this restaurant, and have been going strong for a bunch of years. And then I'm wondering, a few months ago, you had to shut your doors. Can you give us a snapshot of what happened when you decided to close your restaurant at the start of this shutdown?
So what happened? Well, heartbreak happened. That was the first thing that happened. Because you have to lay off the team that you've been working with for so long. That was probably the hardest thing I had to do, knowing that if I didn't do that, there was no way that we would stand a chance of survival. So that was the beginning of it.
Yeah.
It took a little bit of time to really kind of land and see, okay, well, what's next? What do I want to do? And it was very complex, I'm going to say. The moving from, okay, we've laid everybody off, to how do we start putting something together? How do we also ensure that everybody's safe and protected? Because I think that at that time, my biggest concern is safety and health of everybody.
Yeah.
Our staff,
yeah,
our
absolutely.
Guests. And there was not a lot of great guidance, quite honestly. I mean, there was a period of a week, I'm going to say, until the governor stepped in, that it was very much up to whatever federal was saying, and which was not much, and then very little guidance. So you had to make your own decisions. So that was, there was a lot of uncertainty during that week.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit just about how your workers are doing? Like, how have you been keeping in contact with them, and how are people holding up?
I think that there's a variety of different responses across the board. I don't think that there's one size fit all. I've heard from some of the people in the team that are actually very happy right now. in the sense that they've had time for themselves and things and doing projects that they've never had time for before. Not that the uncertainty is not there, but we're making the most out of this time. While there's others that have had serious issues with depression, and some that, how do they take care of their families? Kids now being at home, mom of 3, which, to say the least, is probably the hardest job of all. And so that's really, there's a variety of flavors, I would say, and emotions across the board. And we are offering family meal for all employees.
So you're cooking and delivering food to them, or?
So within the industry on Thursdays, we do what it's called family meal. And so for any unemployed restaurant workers, we provide 100 meals, and people can come and pick up for a certain time. So there's a time period. And so we have a text chain that we send everybody in our team. And we've been lucky to connect that way with some members, those who want to come and on a weekly basis. And so that's been good. And
that's really sweet. Who's cooking that food?
We are the 5 members of the team. There's 4 participating restaurants across Connecticut, including Millwrights, Brico, and Flanders Fish, and us in New Haven. And so we rotate the days, and then we have people from all restaurants in New Haven. They come down and they pick up. We did confit duck the other day with potato gratin and sauté greens, and we've done tacos, and just morale booster, really, more than anything else.
Yeah. And you're managing, are you like cooking with masks on and cooking far apart in the kitchen? How are you doing that?
Yeah, that's exactly how we're doing it. Masks, gloves. We have a little routine on when you come in to work. You sanitize hands first, and then pull everything out of your pockets, including if you're wearing glasses, you sanitize those. So anything that you might have touched before you came in, you sanitize. And then, we've been using plastic now more than ever before, which it's not ideal, but we go through so much gloves, and we go through so much wipes at this point.
Yeah.
We have sanitized wipes in station in various different places in the kitchen. And that's the journey.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, we're going to come back to you to hear a lot more about what's going on there. But I want to introduce folks to Chef Raquel Rivera from A Pinch of Salt. And Raquel has a culinary training program as well as catering company in Bridgeport. And Raquel, I know that you train a number of folks who then become your employees through your catering company. And you also mentor a number of food entrepreneurs, many of whom are Black and Brown folks. And I'm wondering if you can just share a little bit about how is this shutdown impacting your work and also your students/employees?
So it definitely has postponed a lot of events, but it also taught us to be very flexible and kind of open to ideas that weren't necessarily the first thing on board. So like there's for instance, a Mother's Day, I'm catering a Mother's Day event for mothers who've had someone in their household go to prison. So this is with Project Longevity. So it's really cool to kind of do this type of activity, but it was supposed to be all of us coming together, eating and kind of, breaking bread. And that's turning a little differently. So we're still going to do the same thing in the sense of getting together, but what we're going to do is prepare the meals, kind of like what he's preparing meals off site in the kitchen, same thing with the sanitary, keeping up with all of that, but bagging them in, containers, again, plastic being used a lot more than what we would like, but everyone's going to get their meal kind of already sealed up and ready to go, and they'll be delivered. So the idea again, and then we're going to Zoom and get all the moms on board to kind of like have our discussion that way. So it's unfortunate in a lot of ways, but it's been really amazing in some of the ways that people are now realizing that this is the new norm, and kind of thinking about, well, how do we still do what we love in a way that is still safe and allows us to kind of get that out there. In terms of my students, sorry.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, I mean, are most of your catering jobs, I assume, are canceled? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
They're or postponed in like fall and hopefully winter, kind of moving things around.
And so what are you doing for income? How are you surviving?
Fortunately, I've put away some funds, but mostly it's just there's some things trickling in now where I'll be doing some virtual cooking classes with the Lighthouse program, and with there's a couple of companies who want to do wellness programming still for their employees. So it'll be interesting to kind of see all this Zoom and all of this come to action to actually, connect with people in the food way.
Yeah. And how are your students and some of the food entrepreneurs that you mentor doing?
So funny enough, it's similar to what he said. I mean, we're all across the board, all at the end of the day, we all miss being in the kitchen in real life form. We wish we were earning what we were accustomed to kind of earning. It's important. It's our livelihood. But we're learning, again, their flexibility. So some of the students have taken on to freezing some of their product and mailing them, which is pretty cool in terms of like how to, now take a product and spread it a little bit further. So I think of like Dave's Angry Hot Sauce, who's done mailing things, but then even Betsy's Empanadas, like sending them off frozen and kind of working with stuff like that. So it's been really cool. Jalissa has started private chefing, which is interesting, which is great to kind of have them still doing things, maybe not as that focal point as it once was, but still keeping it on the side in the meanwhile.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you see the entrepreneurial spirit kind of kicking in and people figure out other ways to do stuff. Yeah, That's great. Cool. We'll hear more about that as well. I also want to introduce Mr. Aaron Lee, who is a chef, who is a unionized chef at Yale University Dining, and who also runs a catering company, Heartfelt Catering. Aaron, tell me, you were on our show before. We had a great discussion about your experience as an African-American chef in the kitchen. You cook in Connecticut, you cook in New York, and you also have this safety net of being a unionized chef at Yale University, at a big institution, which is certainly not the norm for chefs. But I'm wondering if you can explain a little, what are the realities of this shutdown for you on your work, both at Yale and for your catering business?
Well, starting with Yale, I kind of been fortunate because I do have a union. We've been protected, and I've been getting paid throughout this whole process week. So I'm very fortunate for that. I'm very blessed. And with the catering business, like small time, so I'm kind of mobile. I don't have an exact event yet. So it's kind of like no harm, no foul. If the event doesn't come through, then I didn't really lose much, because usually I'm using some of them put into the event. So I'm fortunate for that, to kind of just understand still. I did have to lined up, but it go through, it get canceled, it get postponed. So right now I've just been at home, man, trying to be innovative and think of new ways to stay relevant, because this is what this time has given us now. It's like, wow, like it just kind of shut down out of nowhere. And it's like, it's going busy, it's fast, you're loving what you do. And then now it's like, boom. So now it's like, all right, now you have to figure out how can I still make money. I still got to survive. Life goes on, so you have to figure out innovative ways to get creative. With me being mobile, I've been fortunate. Like sometimes I can rent a kitchen, or sometimes do it right at home. Like a lot of the times now, I'm noticing that people don't mind. You come right home and set up. Sometimes people have nice places, they have a great kitchen, so it works. And I just been grinding like that, just figuring it out, being mobile. Like, how can I make this happen? Or
right.
That's kind of why I do vegan a lot too, because some of the things aren't as temperature and taste controlled, like, you know, so because of that.
Yeah, Aaron, let me interrupt you for 1 second. Can the rest of you mute your mics? Because there's a little bit of background noise happening. And then Aaron, I want to back you up for a sec. So you sort of glossed over the fact that you're getting paid your full salary right now.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about that for a second. So so did that happen from day one when the university shut down?
Yeah, I haven't missed a check or a payment since the university shut down. So I'm very fortunate for that. The union has been very proactive. And they really stepped up in a major way. So shout out to Taisha, shout out to Bob, shout out to Corey, and shout out to everybody. If I'm missing anybody's name, shout out to the union for really stepping up and really taking charge, and just being proactive for us. And I mean, every couple of weeks we're getting a text, getting an update on what's going on, letting us know if we're going to be going back, and what's going to be the process to going back. As of right now, we're supposed to be out until June. We haven't had any more updates, but as we know, the governor has already said that he doesn't plan on opening the university back to the fall. So with that, in the summer, we really don't have a lot of work for the chefs because the students are gone anyway. So I guess that's there trying to figure out if we do go back to work, where would they put us? But as of right now, no, I haven't missed one payment. So yeah, I'm definitely fortunate and I'm blessed. I didn't want to gloss over that, but I know that there's so many people going through it, you know, and I feel for people, and I really wanted to make it like, oh yeah, you know, it's all good, like, you know, because it's not, you know, so.
Right.
I'm blessed and definitely fortunate and not taking it for granted. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I haven't gone full blown, because I'm like, you know, you never know what can happen. So I guess, you know, it's all timing. So.
Yeah. I'm wondering, I'd love to hear from the three of you about, you know, right now, a lot of people are depending on different social safety nets, even though most of them are not so great in our country, but whether it's unemployment, or if you're fortunate to be part of a union, or, you know, other kinds of things. What can you share about your own experience or about your workers or employees regarding kind of how these programs are working for people?
I think
Avi, do you want to share anything about like your workers who are on unemployment right now, or Raquel? See if y'all are there.
Well, I think that for the first time, I think in a long time, I think that unemployment has actually really supported people. And if there's one thing about this whole stimulus plan that I think it's the most successful part of it. And there's glitches, there's no question about it. There's a lot of people that have not been able to claim unemployment for whatever reason, especially undocumented and so forth and so on. But for the people that have received the support of unemployment, I think it's been critical, and it's been super beneficial for their own well-being. So people that are getting unemployment are claiming, you know, a third of what they were making, and they're receiving an additional $600 from the government. So I think that that's huge. There's implications to that in other ways for owner-operators, especially when there's other programs like the payroll protection program,
right?
Which actually, it really pins owners against team members in a non very subtle way, because at this point, many of my employees are making more money on unemployment than if I bring them back. And so you wanna, how do you tell somebody, hey, you know, I'd like you back, or can you come back? But they're making more money, and so it's understandable. But for some,
the extra 600 that they gave really made a difference, because they're not just getting a portion of their paycheck; they're really getting a substantial amount of money more, which is what people should be getting. Yeah,
without a, I agree with that 100%. But on the other hand, I mean, the counter of that is that if you're participating in the payroll protection program, you gotta, there's a certain time frame by which you got to utilize the relief, right? You got to bring people back in from unemployment, you got to pay them. And in many cases, you're not, even if you pay them at the same rate that you were paying them when you laid them off, you're not going to be able to pay them as much as what they're getting now in some instances. So that was, I feel like the government really did not think that very well. And then on top of that, you have the people who are essential workers, people in the supermarkets, or even restaurant workers, or the public transportation drivers, the bus drivers or truckers that are there, out there, helping keeping things together, and they're getting shit, which is kind of surreal.
Don't swear, we're on live radio, please.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry about that, but
that's okay.
Yeah, so that's it's an interesting perspective, right? Here they are, the people that are actually keeping us safe and making it happen. The people in the post office, I mean, they should be getting a bonus for doing this, right? So it's not perfect. I do think that the government is trying. I think restaurants have been really, like, they have not taken care of us. We're the hardest hit. We represent 60% of the unemployment in the country. In the last version of the payroll protection program, we only received 9% of that money. It's just utterly ridiculous in that sense. We need champions in Washington for the restaurant industry.
Yeah, and I think, you know, a lot of this points to what is really broken in our food system, because the workers' wages have not, like, minimum wage has not increased with inflation for like over 50 years, really. And even with the like $15 an hour campaign, that's not actually where, you know, that's still not actually a real livable wage. And the price of food, like everything that goes into making a restaurant is sort of the economics of it are really out of balance for what the true cost of things are. So I think it is really part of a larger, really out of balance.
But we were already on thin ice before.
You were already what?
Yeah, I mean, we were all on thin ice before this happened.
Yeah.
On thin ice before this happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so
if they were to make that program, if they were to make the payroll protection program work better, and workers were able to stay on unemployment until you were actually ready, what else do you need those costs for? Because I know that the majority of those programs are supposed to pay for workers, but you have a ton of other expenses like your rent and utilities and other things that you have to keep paying for. How could that program be structured so that workers could stay on unemployment until you're actually ready to open the restaurant and still sustain and support the restaurant?
Well, I think that the time frame by which you need to use the money, I mean, there's 75% of that money needs to go to payroll. 25% goes into utilities and rent, right? In most cases, with that amount, you don't afford rent, and so it's for an 8-week period of time where you are not necessarily generating revenue. So, or you're generating minorly revenue. For example, Mother's Day. You compare Mother's Day, we have a large space, we do a lot of events. Mother's Day for us, we did really well on the takeout curbside, really well, parentheses, right? But we made maybe 10% of what we would make normally. So when you're not generating revenue and you're paying the full amount of what you were having in your payroll prior, it really doesn't make a lot of sense for the restaurant. So if we could extend that period of time to, say, 3 more months, and you can use that at your own discretion during that time, then probably revenue will start coming in as things open up, and it will really benefit you. as a restaurant. I understand the idea of this is really to bring people out of unemployment. But for the restaurant livelihood, if you remember, because you were in the restaurant industry too.
Yeah.
You're paying with this month, you're paying last month's bill. So just that, we shut down, there's the influx of cash is shut completely. And whatever you're scraping and making, you're paying last month's bill, which came at full throttle. There's no, so your cash flow now is non-existent. So
yeah.
I think that the stimulus, just like they focused on the airlines and the cruises, and they targeted a very specific stimulus plan for airlines and cruises, same thing should happen to restaurants.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of those things were in there because they wanted to make sure the money was going this time around compared to 2008, that the money was going to workers and not getting in the pockets of big business owners. But it sounds like they really should have had restaurant industry folks and independent business owners at the table to help craft, as they often leave the people who really know what's going on out of actually crafting the legislation so that it could actually have been effective. I just want to let people know you're listening to WNHH 103.5 FM in New Haven. This is the Table Underground. I'm your host, Tagan Engel, and we are talking to three chefs with three different perspectives on the COVID-19 shutdown. I want to turn to Aaron for a minute. Aaron, I know that your dad is also a chef, and I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to either your dad or other chefs in your circles and sort of how their experience has been and what you're observing kind of among your community, whether it's within the Black community or the chef community or other folks.
Okay, well, my dad, yeah, he's a chef at a nice popular restaurant out in North Haven off of State Street. It's called J. Rue's Restaurant. He's a very good chef. He runs a very tight ship. I worked there for a few days, so I seen like it's very nice. It's a nice kitchen, everything. But I think his biggest problem was just his safety. Worried about his employee safety and worried about if somebody does get exposed there, how would they go about trying to still operate a restaurant and still practice being safe. So I think that was his biggest thing, just worried about his employee safety. And but the employees were down to work because like Raquel said, like I'll be saying, like with the wages being as they are, people don't have an option but to still get up and work. It's not like most people live in check to check, or if they have some things saved up, then they're doing the best they can. But people still were down to work. So you got to find a balance on how do we still, produce and be productive, but be safe at the same time. So, just from talking to him, that was his biggest thing, like showing them like, yeah, we got to work, but, I still want to show my employees that I care, I still want to.
So they're still open right now?
Yeah, they're still open. They're doing takeout, just like, the other normal restaurants. But yeah, they did shut down for, I think, a week or so, but they got things back up and running. So he seems to be doing fine, but they seem to be doing well now. So.
Wow.
Yeah, but as far as like we speaking on the Black community, I think that we just need to be more proactive about what's going on. And this is why, as far as heartfelt catering, I try to take the direction that I'm taking, because I feel like, one of the biggest things that we're suffering from is, our diets. And that also adds into why we may be susceptible to this disease because of how we eat. I feel like, if we would be more proactive about the things we put on our body, yeah, the disease is not presentable. I mean, still, but at the same time, I feel like, we could be trying to eat better and do better to build our immune systems and make us stronger so that we'd be able to be more capable of fighting off disease. I
know I've been watching you, like, part of why I reached out to you, because I was seeing you post all these pictures of cooking all these fancy meals. And I was like, who are you cooking for? Are you doing catering through the shutdown? And you said, no, I'm just cooking for myself. So tell us a little about what you've been doing. I mean, you have the good fortune of having an income right now. And tell us what you've been doing in the kitchen.
Just trying to step my game up as far as sauces, as far as plating and doing more gourmet styles, getting more creative and getting more in touch with, different styles of cooking. And, when I first started, it was just me doing things that I love to do and things that I may be good at. But now I want to try to take things to the next level and really tap into what fine dining and cooking is. And I want to be able to get to the goal, like what Avi is doing, like what Raquel is doing. That is my goal, hopefully down the line. So, I'm just trying to, push myself to get to that level. So while I'm home and I do have extra time, hey, let me try to work on some plating skills. Let me try to look into some different sauces and unique things to, really, take my brand to the next level. So I think that's the biggest thing why I've been trying to do, like show private dinners or just plating skills,
And
That's
are you sharing your food with people?
Well, really just my kids or whoever's here, but for the most part, I just been home. So I'm really just been my own critic, but I guess you need a critic, right? So that's the thing. Just trying to constantly better myself while I'm here and, get more proactive online and use it online because this is big. People making millions of dollars online, man, So how can I incorporate my brand to what's going on online? I guess this is what this time is giving us to do. Just think about more innovative ways to make money and generate revenue. So
yeah, it's good. I'm glad you're feeling some positivity from this. I want to turn. Did you want to add something?
Also, I just wanted to, we spoke about the as far as why do we feel like we're not taking this serious. And I just feel like, we were speaking about the trauma of us always having to deal with certain situations, deal with, what's going on in the community and always having to make light of things just to get through some of our pain. So I just want to touch on that too. Like, we all suffering, we're all going through things, but we got to try to step up as a community, really like, focus on what's important. We got to start having more unity, and we got to start realizing that this is real, man. If we don't start having unity and start sticking together, man, what's going to happen to us? A lot of us don't have control of what's going on with our insurance, our health. We don't really even know what's going on in these hospitals. So I feel like we got to be more responsible. We got to step up to the plate and start taking control of ourselves and our bodies. And we got to start really going. I really respect what's going on. And even with immigration, I really respect how the Hispanic community has stood up for each other. They ride with each other and they support and they out here. I really admire that, And I feel like we need to start doing that together too. We need to start stepping up and being stronger and really being proactive about what's going on in the community and stop letting the trauma get, even though it's been a system, I really feel like, it's time for us to really like see what's going on and, push the culture forward. And that's what we can do Heartfelt Catering. That's what I'm trying to push the healthy living, healthy lifestyle. And however I can help out and be a part of that, however I can work out with everybody else, we can all be together on this journey. So that's what I want to say.
Yeah, and you and I talked a lot about like not putting the blame on the people who are being harmed by the systems, but really like looking at that there are systems in place that for hundreds of years have harmed Black and brown people, Indigenous people, often working people. And so, like you have a good example of being part of a union because there you shows you like how organizing and working together can actually bring some support. So
for sure. That's true.
Raquel, do you wanna step in?
I'm thinking about a lot of things. In terms of unemployment, I was thinking about what the chef was saying. Unemployment has definitely, like, okay, for someone like me who is a one-person show, where there is not, like, I don't have a actual company, like a location or a restaurant that I necessarily represent. So I know, like, when I was thinking about, like, okay, what does unemployment look like for someone like me or my students who are, just created an LLC, they're now establishing that. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, now I'm no longer employed under a restaurant or I'm not employed under someone else. So how do I actually receive some benefits in some way? And so it was really cool to find out, like, there are things for small businesses in that capacity that is not just like taking out a loan. Because even when I saw taking out a loan, I was like, what good is taking out a loan? If I'm struggling, I don't want to continue to struggle. You know what I'm saying? I want to make do with what I have or have some type of assistance. So there, the end of the month.
Well, I thought just to say one thing, like the thing I think that's pretty messed up about how they did that is that the Paycheck Protection Program, they called it a loan, except that if you use it the way they're telling, like how Avi was describing, like 75% towards paychecks and 25% towards your rent and utilities and things, then it gets forgiven. But it's interesting when you talk about like the cruises and the airlines, they just call that a bailout. Why were we not calling it a bailout for all these small businesses? Because I had the same response you did. Like, why would I apply for this loan? And then, I mean, Avi, maybe you can talk to this when Raquel is done, but the application process for this thing was like such a mess. So, but I'll let you finish saying what
No,
else
so
you were going to say.
No, so I've just been excited that some of my students were able to go for unemployment insurance, just regularly. I myself have looked into the, for self-employment, but like I guess you had to get denied by unemployment, and then you can take the federal type of unemployment insurance, if you will. So I'm waiting to hear back what that looks like. But I mean, like, there wasn't something, you wonder, there's so many people who get left out in this, we're not all cookie cutters. So, we're in the same industry,
Right.
but one size doesn't fit all, So it was pretty interesting to kind of say, okay, well, what about me? What does that look like? And I'm glad things are now, slowly trying to piece itself together. But just like the chef was saying, we definitely need more assistance with our restaurant work. I mean, we are such a big, there's so many of us, and it's such a great platform for people to kind of get into, regardless to what your background and education is, right? It's been this like really accessible place that we can do it. And yet it's the one who's most hurt during this whole thing, which is pretty sucky.
Yeah.
So.
Are you noticing people also struggling with depression and feeling really isolated? Because I mean, chefs are used to working 24/7 and being busy. What are you noticing about that?
I think, especially when I think of my team, we're so, just like you're saying, there's that like overlap. There's always, our business, our personal life kind of morphs into one, because we're always in the kitchen together and we're working together in such a way. And there is this isolation where it's kind of like, not only what am I supposed to be doing, because we almost feel guilty, right? Like, what do I do with this time? What am I, and then there's that feeling of disconnect. And I think we've done well in terms of the students kind of connecting, like we hit each other up, hey chef, what you doing? Or, how is this? Because it's necessary. We also FaceTime each other while we're in the kitchen, just to kind of have that feel of like, look at Jalissa cooking something down, and Betsy, or dropping off some, like Marsha has dropped me off some food here, which has felt so comforting, just to be able to eat something that I'm not creating myself. Because, it's fun to kind of try something new and kind of get some Haitian food on and stuff like that, so it's been pretty awesome in terms of thinking about like, how do we still connect? But there's definitely a lot of missing going on. We definitely miss the kitchen.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, Avi, one of the things that you've been doing is connecting with other restaurant owners in New Haven and working on the Frontline Foods program, and as well as the Family Meals program. Can you give us just like a quick snapshot of what you're doing with those programs?
Sure. That was really the outcome of not knowing what we were going to do and how we were going to survive. And immediately what I noticed is, how do we naturally are helping the community. So it was, okay, the hospitals are going to need help. And our people are going to need help, our people meaning our industry. So I reached out to Jason Sobosinski from Olmo and Duncan Goodall from Coffee Catering. And then we started just figuring out how we could help, and putting together a group of people that then moved from 3 restaurants to 7 restaurants and ended up being 22 restaurants, providing over 1,000 meals to the hospital every day. And the idea is that, I mean, you come together, just like Aaron was saying, there's a union, for a lack of a better word. So you team up with other restaurant owners and figure out how can we support the community and support ourselves in that process as well. We knew that restaurants are the heartbeat of most cities. If a restaurant, you go to any city that is thriving, it has good restaurants. And so imagine walking down Chapel Street or College Street or downtown New Haven, and you start seeing shut down,
just empty storefronts. Yeah.
That
were you all able to get
in the,
I know you had sorry. I know you had wanted to try to get meals out to folks who were struggling with hunger or who are homeless. Were you able to coordinate getting some of the meals that the restaurants are cooking out to those folks?
Yeah, so we're participating with an initiative from the city, something that we presented to the city about 8 weeks ago, that actually started about 2 weeks ago, and it's taking care of the homeless in New Haven. And then I secured a donation for kids, for families that are struggling. We got 2,000 meals donated from a company called Kid Fresh, who produces frozen foods for kids, which hides the vegetables inside the plastics. And so we're distributing that starting next Friday at 2 different schools. So I think that that's been really powerful at this time for me. How do you activate your own network to help the community? That's really been critical.
Yeah. I've been so inspired because all around New Haven, there's been like incredible mutual aid work happening, and people within different communities getting together to like get food. I've been helping with getting food out to undocumented folks. There's been people kind of organizing within the Black community through CT Core, getting food out through Common Ground School, farms. And then like a lot of the emergency food providers have been really well organized to be letting people know which food pantries and soup kitchens are open. And so it's like, we have a really strong food community in New Haven. And while there's certainly a lot of people who are struggling, it's been inspiring to me, like how much cooperation and collaboration there's been to really try to meet the need. And unfortunately, the need is just so enormous in our community. So I do want to ask you just, what, you said, being scared about or just wondering how you're going to survive this. What's the reality for you and what you know of some other restaurants about, like, how long can you handle being shut down like this?
It's funny that you asked that question. I was speaking with my mom this morning, and she's in Colombia. And I was like, I was I was in a hole this morning, and just like, which happens often these days. And then I finally got myself out of the hole by just focusing on the things that support me personally, taking care of my own self, which I'm not
by doing what?
I was going to say, which I'm not going to go into that, but well, a little exercising and meditation was very helpful to me. And I finally got myself out of it. And sometimes it's just hard to project what's going to come, right? So I trying to stay both in the present moment as best as possible. And at the same time, you do have to look at the future and saying, okay, what's the game plan here? Can we pivot? And if so, how do we do it? Because the more that I think about it, this is really going to be the new normal for at least the next year or so. I mean, we do so many events like Raquel does. Forget the events. Events are done for the foreseeable future, for parties of 150 people, which we do a lot of weddings and we do a lot of events. We have a beautiful space. So we're looking, okay, how do we do that outdoors? And if so, we've been talking to so many of our couples and having a dynamic conversation to see how can we support one another, because, it's a hugely important time for them. And at the same time, we don't want to do it in a way that it's unsafe for anybody. You don't want to invite your grandfather of 85 to an event that it's really out of pure joy when you're compromising somebody's health. I'm not sure if I answer the question, but in that sense, looking at the future, sometimes I was reading an article that was saying light at the end of the tunnel or a train coming your way. And that's really it. Sometimes I see the light at the end of the tunnel, and sometimes a train at fast speed is coming my way. And some days are better than others. So it's like thinking, how do we pivot? How do we move forward. And
Yeah.
I think just keeping positive has been the key there.
Yeah.
So I don't have an answer really. What's going to
I don't
happen?
think there is an answer. I don't think there is an answer, but I think, I think Tunde Wei, who's an amazing chef, has written some pieces about is this the end of the restaurant industry? Like the model, just talking about like the economic model and social model of the industry, of the restaurant industry. And he does a lot of like pop-up events and other kinds of things. So, yeah, but it's a hard question, and there's so many unknowns still in this moment. We're nearing the end of our time, but I want to just hear from each of you. There's a couple things I want to hear, but I guess one piece is around about reopening and kind of what, our state is set to reopen, supposedly start to reopen in 5 days. We still don't have testing for most people. We don't have very accurate testing since I heard this morning it was high as like 48% false negatives on the rapid test, which is extremely concerning. What are you feeling, all of you, about when would you feel safe to reopen, and what would that look like? Raquel, do you want to start? We'll just do a little short bit from each person.
Yeah, I definitely think we're jumping the gun a bit. I know we need to get back to some type of system back in place, but I definitely think it's premature. And I think there's still so much figuring out that needs to be done. And also, what are our new norms? Like, how are we really going to practice safely in ways that make sense and that everyone can do across the board, right? Like, I don't think that type of education has been provided for, I think of a farmer's market. Like, this would be our farmer's market seasons. We're gearing up, in a month or two to open up.
Right.
And, when I think about what are the practices, like what do we expect from our customers? What do we expect from our farmers? What do we expect from all of us who are vendors at the farmers market? Like, what are those interactions that we're keeping each other safe? 6 feet, doing that, wearing gloves, wearing masks, but is that just really it? You know what I'm saying? Like, what else are we? And I think we're, opening, but I wouldn't feel safe kind of going out there and saying, okay, I got gloves on, I got a mask on, just go do it. I don't feel that that's enough to make me feel safe. So I know for me, if I'm not feeling safe, I'm not expecting any of my team to do something that I wouldn't be able to piggyback on and be a part of it, So it's kind of like, I know there's a lot of memes and stuff out there that's like, well, we'll stay from the background, see what happens out there, and then kind of prejudge what that looks like. I think there's just going to be a learning curve that I'm not willing to take a chance in and get people together in any way and know that falls on me,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm realizing, thank you. And I'm realizing I have another question, Avi, before we go out. There's been a lot of issues with like sourcing food, like meatpacking and the meatpacking industry and kind of the just unsafe working conditions and a lot of people getting sick. I'm wondering if you could just speak briefly about food sourcing from farms, from other purveyors, and how you're feeling about this during that time.
It's been a challenge for sure. The supply chain has been not super steady. What's going on? I mean, it's heartbreaking to see or hear that they're slaughtering animals. Actually, they're not slaughtering, they're killing animals because they don't have a way to move the product. So as a practical example, we ordered some particular cut of meat that we've been ordering for 7 years. Steadily has risen, but then we ordered the other day and it was a third of the price higher of when we closed, or when we closed and then reopened. So it's pretty amazing how the price of food has gone up, but also the supply. I mean, we're ordering 2 days in advance now instead of the day before because you don't know if you're going to get the stuff. Since we're doing curbside pickup and people we're having same day order, but they need to place the order ahead of time. meaning you need to place the order at 2 to pick up between 4 and 7. That has given us a little bit of more leeway. And I think that a lot of the people in the public, we've gotten somebody who was like outraged that, how is it that you don't have this? And we're like, okay, there's a global pandemic, first of all. So just
check yourself.
just breathe, like,
yes.
let's be helpful to one another at this point.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that don't have the same control in the supply chain. So it has its own difficulties.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are running short on time. Aaron, I just want to come back to you for 1 sec. I'm wondering, we just have a second, but just to give you 1 more minute, do you have a special recipe that you think you could share with us? Just tell us what it might be. We can put it up on the website, because I know you've been getting real creative in the kitchen.
That's a good question.
You've been cooking a lot of fish, I see, right? A lot of salmon?
Yeah, the last dish I did, it was, what was it? I did, it was just a salad. So it was spinach and kale for the greens. And then for the top, I had a crab cake with some plantains. And then I had an orange ginger vinaigrette that I used for the dressing. I also had an avocado with. So that was the latest thing I did. And then before I did a stuffed salmon. The stuffed salmon was, I just like gutted the salmon, and then I took it diced up with some crab meat. I took some artichoke, and I took some spinach, sauteed it together with some ricotta cheese, some garlic, some Parmesan, and then I used that as a stuffed filling, stuffed the salmon, and I just roasted it high in the oven on 400 for like 12 minutes. And that's another one that came out really good. And then before, it was just the salmon.
I'm just going to jump in for 1 second. So I hope, will you share these with us so we can put them up on the website?
Yeah,
on the Table Underground? All right, good. So we'll grab some recipes from you. I know we jumped all over the place, and there's so much to talk about when it comes to food and the food system and restaurants, but I really am grateful to all of you for making time and sharing your perspective. And I will put links to Heartfelt Catering, to Roya Restaurant, and to A Pinch of Salt Catering up on thetableunderground.com. And people can check the website, thetableunderground.com, and you can check, this will be up by podcast later today. And just thank you all so much for joining me.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Pleasure to meet
Thank
everyone.
you.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Lots of love, everyone.
Bye.